Nozipho Tshabalala, formerly known as Nozipho, has been an inspiration to me ever since I was in high school. We need more women to be at the forefront of facilitating engagement on contemporary challenges, speaking to business persons, political stakeholders, and people from different facets of life, including, of course, civil society.
I'm a conversation strategist. I work with governments and businesses around the world, helping them to have consequential conversations that move the world. I like to think of it as helping smart people have simple conversations that make the world a better place. And in my line of work, I moderate panel discussions around the world and I facilitate strategic conversations. And one of the most common conversations that keeps coming up, irrespective of which global stage I'm on, is the conversation on women. And in particular, the conversation about the empowerment of women and African women in particular.
While some, like Nozi, use their voices to facilitate conversation, we have Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who speaks through writing and has recently taken to addressing multiple platforms to speak about the importance of feminism, in particular on the African continent.
It's still a word that gets a lot of negativity. And I cannot tell you how much of that I get in Nigeria. How constantly I'm told that people want you to shut up and write and stop talking about feminism because you're destroying marriages and you're misleading young girls and that sort of thing. I think what's important is to try and get people to engage, is to, and it's not so much to, because I don't want to say, smile when you don't feel like smiling, because that's what women have been told for too damn long. But it's simply to say, make your case. And here's what I mean. We're enraged. We have every right to be enraged. But that person looking at you in your rage doesn't actually know why you're enraged. So make your case. And I like storytelling. I don't like theory because I don't think people connect with theory. But I like storytelling. And so I'm learning, for example, about this vast epidemic of violence against women in this country. We need to tell the stories and to humanize those people. And most of all, I think, feminism in general needs to engage with boys and men. It's not enough to say to women, come gather together and be empowered. We have to say to men, stop raping, stop beating, right? And we have to say, it's true. And I think we need to, and it's something that we collectively have to talk about. And I don't think we talk about this enough, right? A woman cannot, by staying home at night and holding her keys in a particular way and wearing tight jeans and all of those things, that's not what's going to stop violence. It's the perpetrators that we'll be focusing on. So I think feminism has to make a lot more room for the engagement with men, of men, about men. Otherwise, we're not getting anywhere. And so the feminist boys have to get on board.
Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She is currently the Director General of the World Trade Organization, the first African and African woman, as well as woman, to hold this position. She has a long CV. She has worked in government as a Minister of Finance, serving 2 terms in Nigeria, and she's also been a Minister of Foreign Affairs. She has worked with the World Bank and multiple institutions of global governance for many decades. Ngozi is also very well educated up to PhD level with degrees from prestigious institutions, and she identifies as a womanist. There's so much I can say about her. But anyway, let's take a view at what she had to say in this one conversation.
See, where are men in this? Hopefully manning up. Men can more equitably share domestic and caring work. They can point out sexism when they see it. They can make space for women and mentor and sponsor them. Given that men disproportionately still have the power, we won't see change unless they work with us to create a world that will be better for men and women.
Let's talk about the glass cliff phenomenon. If a business or an organisation is going well, then they're likely to appoint a new leader who looks a lot like the old one, that is, a man. But if they are in difficulties, they decide it's time to get someone quite different and often reach for a woman. To take one example, Christine Lagarde became the first woman to lead the International Monetary Fund when it was in crisis after its former head was arrested for sexual assault. Ngozi, while not as dramatic as that, you know a bit about glass cliffs too.
I certainly do. I remember clearly being chosen as a young woman to lead a very problematic World Bank project in Rwanda. No one else wanted to lead it lest they fail. So there was this attitude of, if she pulls it off, it's okay. If she fails, then well, she's just a young African woman whose career doesn't matter that much. From that experience, I learned things about myself and leadership. And the biggest lesson we can share is this. If you have a sense of purpose that drives you, then aim high, become a leader. And make room as you go. Former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright is fond of saying that there is a special place in hell for women who don't support women. In this world, we need to be there for each other.
The story of Tererai Trent reminds me of how privileged I am. Although I too am from Zimbabwe, I was not subjected to early marriage or child marriage, but I've seen that so many women have been exposed to such for various reasons, in particular owing to social, cultural, and economic challenges. I don't want to add much to what she has to say. However, I want to say that she is a signal of hope, and it is never too late to dream and have new aspirations about what you can do as a woman. Tererai Trent left an abusive marriage, and she managed to craft a new life, get remarried, and pursue her education up to PhD level.
So I always talk about coming from this long line of generations of women who had been married off when they were young, before they could define their own dreams. That's where I'm coming from. By the time I was 18, I was already a mother of 4, and I lost one child because I could not produce enough milk. I was a child myself. But I always wanted an education, and I had grown up in Rhodesia, during the colonial system that oppressed the black people. And education was never a priority amongst women. So, but I wanted the education. I felt that education was a pathway out of poverty for me. So I was 22 years of age, no high school diploma, nothing. And expecting my 5th child, when a woman from Heifer International, her name is Jolak, she came to the village. I had no idea who she is. Later on, I learned she was a program officer. When she came into the village, she asked me one fundamental question: what are your dreams? I had no idea I'm supposed to dream as a black woman, oppressed, marginalized. And I kept quiet, and she asked again, what are your dreams? When I opened my mouth, I became a chatterbox. And I said, I want to go to America. I want to have an undergraduate, a master's, and a PhD.
Last and of course not least, Dambisa Moyo, originally from Zambia. Unafraid to be labeled as an unrealistic critique, she's well known for writing and speaking about the dangers of aid to Africa. I believe in her analysis because she speaks importantly about how the costs and benefits of aid need to be assessed, and that those who give aid need to be careful, and that those who are being given aid, former South African governments, need to be criticized and need to be pushed to do more without going out for handouts or without jumping for more money from the West, from China, and what have you, without seeking solutions to their own problems, for example, bad governance and corruption.
Another of your critics, former speechwriter to President George W. Bush, Michael Gerson, who, during the Bush administration, Gerson argues the United States started taking a new approach to aid, and you didn't pay enough attention in your book. In attacking aid, in dead aid, you didn't pay attention. Quote, America's AIDS and malaria programs during the 90s were focused, centrally directed, and results-oriented. Surely Moyo should recognize the difference between aid provided to oppressive kleptocrats and aid given to faith-based organizations distributing AIDS drugs, close quote.
I'm very disappointed because my one piece of advice is don't ever write a review if you haven't read the book. On page 7 of my book, I very clearly outline the 3 types of aid. Humanitarian or emergency aid, which goes in, for example, a tsunami or a flood or an earthquake, which I believe there's a moral imperative for us to act as a global society. The The second type of aid I talk about on page 7 is what I call NGO or charitable aid. So this is the relatively small amount of aid where we send money for a scholarship, for example, to support a child in Zambia. I myself sit on charitable board. I'm on the board of Room to Read, which is a San Francisco-based charity, education charity. But it's important for us to understand what those type of interventions can and cannot do. So yes, they can send a girl to school, or in this case, yes, we can send HIV drugs to Africa. But longer term, these are not going to help these economies grow by the levels or rates of growth that we need them to grow to put a dent in poverty.
So